Congressman Lieu, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kristen.
Well, a lot to get to. I do want to get your reaction to President Trump's speech, but I have to start off by getting your thoughts on that really remarkable moment, the beginning of his speech when Congressman Green interrupted him. We know that Leader Jeffries, Democratic leadership, had urged your entire caucus to show decorum, to avoid making the story about themselves ahead of the address. Do you think that Congressman Green should face some kind of consequence or censure from inside your caucus for the protest last night?
Not at all. We are all separately elected to represent our constituents. Congressman Green was representing his constituents, and we had folks in that chamber, such as Marjorie Taylor Greene, wearing a MAGA hat, a campaign hat, and that was against the rules. And so, no, I don't think Al Green should be censured at all.
If there's a vote to censure him, you would vote no, just to be clear?
I would absolutely vote no. And there are much larger issues at stake, including Donald Trump's speech, where he just straight up lied to the American people.
You know, and again, I do want to get to his speech, but on this point very quickly, he was obviously taking aim at Democrats. He was taking aim at former President Biden. Did Congressman Green take the bait effectively and overshadow some of the very calm, quiet protests that were happening inside of the chamber last night?
Again, I believe Congressman Green was representing his constituents. He was doing what he believed was the right thing to do. And one of the great things about America is our right to freedom of speech.
Okay, well, let me get your reaction to President Trump's address. He talked about a range of different issues, gave a robust defense for the tariffs that he has imposed, which he's now pulling back on those just a little bit. He argues these tariffs are necessary to address the fentanyl issue, to address illegal immigration. What say you? Does President Trump have a point here?
Last night, Donald Trump lied to the American people. He promised a golden age, but the facts show that we're entering a Trump slump. Inflation has further increased. Consumer sentiment is down, and the jobs report today shows weaker than expected job growth. In fact, the weakest since last July. Trump's indiscriminate tariffs are increasing the risks of stagflation or even a recession.
Alyssa Slotkin, of course, delivered the Democratic response. She talked about her background as a CIA officer. She talked about the importance of the economy, the fact that the economy is a national security issue. She really laid out, to some extent, a roadmap of messaging. Three main points. I'll tick through them. The middle-class economy, a strong national security, and defending democracy. In your mind, Congressman, is that the Democratic Party's platform right now, moving forward?
Democrats have always supported those three priorities, and I note that Alyssa Slotkin, my friend, has served in the national security area for many, many years. Donald Trump, in the longest speech in U.S. history for a joint address to Congress, never even mentioned veterans issues. And we know that Trump's chaos in firing federal employees indiscriminately is particularly harming veterans, because about 1 in 4 federal employees are veterans themselves. And his cuts to Medicaid is going to harm veterans, because 1 in 10 veterans rely on Medicaid. And so Donald Trump's actions are not only harming our economy, they're harming our nation's veterans and our national security.
The president, Republicans say they are not going to cut Medicaid. They say they're not going to touch entitlements. I hear you saying that that's going to be on the chopping block. Are you saying you don't believe their promises?
The Republicans are lying. Let me tell you why. In the draconian budget that they passed, they directed the Energy and Commerce Committee to cut $880 billion. The only way that committee could do that is to cut Medicaid. Because if they cut everything else under their jurisdiction, that would only reach half of $880 billion. So the only way to do this with the law that Republicans want to pass in their budget would be to cut Medicaid by hundreds of millions of dollars.
Let me ask you one more about Senator Slotkin's speech. This is what Tom Nichols wrote in The Atlantic about her remarks. He wrote, quote, Slotkin failed to capture the hallucinatory nature of our national politics. Slotkin's address suffered from the same half-heartedness that has seized the Democrats since last November. Her response and the behavior of the Democrats in general showed that they still fear being a full-throated opposition party because they believe that they will alienate voters who will somehow be offended at them for taking a stand against Trump's schemes. What is your response to that? Do you agree with that characterization at all, Congressman?
I do not. Democrats are fighting back, and we're also focused on kitchen table issues. As a result, if you look at Trump's approval ratings, he was +6, according to Reuters poll, in terms of approval, disapproval after the inauguration. Less than a month later, he's at -7 in the same poll, a swing of 13 points. So Democratic messaging is affecting the Trump and bringing down his approval numbers to where he's now underwater. And the voters really do care about prices. That's on the top of every poll. And Donald Trump has done nothing to lower anyone's prices. In fact, his tariffs, indiscriminate tariffs, are likely going to increase prices.
Congressman, I guess the question here, you are in the minority in the House and the Senate, and of course, obviously, Republicans control the White House. How can Democrats fight back in this moment?
So Democrats are fighting back every day by highlighting stories of, for example, veterans. Leader Jeffries just did a terrific press conference today with 3 veterans who were treated very badly by Donald Trump, who were lied to and indiscriminately fired for no good reason. And we're also using everything we can legislatively. Leader Jeffries has set out a 10-point plan that's focused on 3 themes: legislation, mobilization, and litigation. Over 100 lawsuits have been filed, and a number of federal judges have stopped the unlawful executive orders that Donald Trump has promulgated.
I have to ask you about the government funding. It runs out of funding in just over a week now. Speaker Johnson saying he will put a clean CR on the floor until September. Would you vote for that, Congressman?
I would be opposed to a year-long. It's not a clean CR because, by definition, clean CR would mean that the Trump administration would execute what Congress passed into law. But right now, the Trump administration is not doing that. So unless I get assurances that the Trump administration is actually going to follow the law and follow the congressional appropriations bills, then I can't vote for it.
Congressman, can you get more specific with me? What kind of assurances specifically do you need to see in order to vote for this CR, or else the government could potentially close down?
I would love Donald Trump to simply say he's going to follow the law, that he's going to follow the law that Congress passes. And if he says that, then I could support congressional appropriations bills. But the president doesn't say that, then these congressional appropriation bills, he's just going to treat as a recommendation. And there's no way I'm going to vote for that.
When you say follow the law, very quickly, Congressman, you mean in terms of the cuts that we are seeing carried out by Elon Musk? Is that what you're referring to?
I'm saying if Congress says we're going to fund the Department of Education, we can't have Donald Trump saying, you know, I'm just going to dismantle this department and not apply the law and not fund it. He cannot do that. He cannot take agencies that Congress has established, such as USAID, and simply dismantle that. And by the way, the U.S. Supreme Court just ruled against the Trump administration, saying he can't just freeze all this funding to USAID. So I need Donald Trump to simply say he's going to follow the law. Otherwise, it's really hard for Democrats to support any appropriations bills if we have no assurance that the administration is going to treat them not just as recommendations, but actually as law.
All right. Well, it's going to be a fascinating week-plus stretch we have coming up. Congressman Ted Lieu, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Great to have you on the program.